Hey everyone, welcome to Inking About. Today we're going to be going over 3 decks that I'm going to start off Attack of the Vine with. Had a great time in Wilds Unknown, managed to do quite well in set champs. So just going to dive into a few decks that I think would be a good starting place for the next set. Still need a little bit of tweaking, they're not 100% there yet. But we've got a trusty old Blurple with a little bit of Amber added in, which is a bit of a weird one, something we're going to have to get used to as of this set. Run-of-the-mill Purple Steel, throwing in some of the Omni Droid fun. And we're also going to go into a bit of Ruby Amber, Horned King Control. Some people online have already been saying about Horned King and Olaf and some of the combos there. It's a deck that I think might be quite painful to play against. However, it'll be interesting to have a look at it and see what we think. So we're going to start off with Blurple here. So diving straight into our 1-drops, we've got Louisa and Rafiki. A couple of just really solid 1-drops. They've done us well so far. Can trade up, can trade with other 1-drops, 2-drops. Louisa sometimes live. We've got the shift target there, which is really good. Can then move some damage off. So just some really solid 1-drops. I'm struggling with 1-drops at the moment. I think obviously post-rotation, not as many cards, not as many good 1-drops at the moment. So I think these are the two that really stand out at the moment. So that's why I've gone for these two. In our 2-drops, we've got Happy and Mrs. Hasagawa. I love a 2-cost 3/3. I think they put some decent bodies on the board, can trade up, can take 1-drops and other 2-drops with living sometimes. Stops your opponent from turning sideways a bit. If we're going against any aggressive sort of like Amber Emerald decks, just whacking down the 2-cost 3/3 I think can pause their movement a little bit. So that's why I've picked them two there. Kanga's where the deck first gets interesting. So the thing I wanted to play around with this deck the most is singing what else can I do with Kanga on turn 4. So playing a Kanga on turn 3 and then singing what else can I do. I know it's not going to be the most consistent line. It's not going to be consistent like we were used to with Sail and Tipo. However, it's better than nothing. Some people are trying out Detective Mickey, but I think having an uninkable 1/3 in a deck can just lower the quality of the deck a little bit. So that's why I'm trying out this one. Obviously, you can sing what else can I do with other characters later on in the game. Have a little bit of filter, so it's not like a dead card or anything like that. Like Detective Mickey can be a bit later on in the game. So that's why I'm trying out this one. So 4 copies of Kanga there and 4 copies of what else can I do to try and maximise our chances of seeing that when we want to. 3 copies of Cheshire Cat, obviously just a brilliant card. Moving the damage around, contesting the board, stops your opponent turning sideways. Solid card. Tigger and Isis are some really crucial 4-drops. Grandmother Willow is going to be a pain, like she has been already for so long. So a couple of answers there. Obviously dropping these on turn 4. Hopefully you've got something out on board already, so you can drop an Isis, exert the Willow, take it out. If not, Tigger can return to the hand. Don't think Tigger's a horrible card to see later on in the game anyway. The game's probably going to be a bit more mid-rangey / faster at the moment, I think, with some of the cards we've got. So always just being able to return a 2-cost is absolutely fine. And also the 4 attack on him can take out an Eleanor if need be. Isis, obviously, no more Elsa. So it's our kind of, apart from Demona, our only source of exerting opponent characters. So that's why we've got a few copies in there. We have Merryweather, just really strong body and warded. So can't really complain there. Lumpy's a really interesting new addition. A little bit like a Bell, moves a little bit less damage, bigger body, can quest for 2. A couple of games of testing I've had so far, I've really liked Lumpy. Put in some real great value, and I know we're only running 1 copy of Crystal Robin, but being able to search for a Lumpy I think is also quite nice. So maybe it could be a Bell instead if you prefer Bell, but I think a 3/6 is a really nice beefy body. So being able to move 2 damage, yeah, solid card. Really been enjoying Lumpy. Mrs. Incredible, a favourite of mine. If we thought Lumpy was beefy, then we should see Mrs. Incredible. 5/6 stat line on her. Not got as many evasives anymore post-rotation like we used to have with Blurple. So Mrs. Incredible here is kind of one of our only answers to evasives. But having that 5 attack and that 6 willpower really means that we can answer some of those evasives. Or if we're playing against a deck that's running something like Horseman Strikes, choose to have the law, quest out the game a bit quicker, absolutely fine with that. A lot of these characters have big bodies, so get a bit of damage on them, move it with Lumpy, move it with Cheshire Cat. I'm liking that. Move it with our next card here, Louisa Madrigal. our shift 3, our 6/4 that we can pay and move damage onto her and then move it onto other characters. So we can shift that early of Louisa, take out something on their board that's maybe got quite a lot of willpower, or just leave her there and start accumulating damage and then moving it off onto some other characters. So she's been quite nice in testing so far. Hades for a bit of card draw, making a deal. Not a lot to say there. We know Hades is good. A lot of the time it's just a pay 5, draw 2. We've got a 1 copy of Christopher Robin, which allows us to play our Kanga. So only 1 copy because I don't think he's insanely good, but obviously we need him to enable the Kanga line. However, he's not a dead card. 4/4 the quest for 2 is okay. And obviously being able to whack him down and search for a Kanga or a Lumpy. I don't think you're often going to be searching for the Kanga. You can be looking for the Lumpy in your mid game to try and get a bit more board presence, move some damage, a little bit of removal there. Not going to be shocked to see our last few here. We've got Demona, good source of card draw, good source of exerting opponents. I don't really know what else to say about her. She's just a brilliant card. And then we're topping out with our Hades, just to slam him down, remove something of the opponents, kind of being a sort of like mid-range with elements of control in it means that hopefully we can out-control some of the other mid-range decks. And then also we've got Let It Go there, so we can be throwing down a Hades, putting something into your opponent's inkwell, then singing Let It Go, and hopefully dominating the board with strong bodies and removal. So some of the lines we might want to see with this deck is 1 cost, 2 cost. I don't think there's much difference in the 1 cost and the 2 cost there, so whichever one you get out of those I don't think is a big deal. So going 1, 2. If we're against something like an Amber Emerald Toys build, a bit more lower to the ground, we probably want to go a Cheshire Cat on 3. And then follow that up with like a Tigger or an Isis to return some of their board or get challenging some of their stuff straight away. If we're against something else a bit mid-rangey and we want to try and go over them a little bit, then playing a Kanga on 3 I think could be quite good. Singing What Else Can I Do, if we can do that. And then following that up with like a Merryweather, just a big strong body, can challenge loads of their stuff and live. And then going into your Hades to get some card draw, your Lumpies to move your damage. When we've run out of cards, we can drop our Demonas. Hopefully they've got a few cards in hand, so we're not giving them too many cards. And then topping off of that Hades to get rid of their strongest bodies and taking out their board with our other characters left over. So not reinventing the wheel too much here, just dropping good bodies on curve pretty much, just like Blurple loves to do. But anyway, let's get into some Purple Steel. So Purple Steel, I've gone for the droid variant here. It may not be the strongest version, however, it's always fun to try out some new stuff. So I figured we'd try out the Syndrome of all the Omni Droids. Obviously, this set we've got a new 3 cost Omni Droid, which is a 3 cost 4/3 that when it has no damage on it, it gets +2 strength. We also have a new 8 cost Omni Droid, which is an 8/8 shift 6 with resist 2, and it returns the cards underneath when we shift. That quest for 2 also, and is an absolute beast. So if we can get that out, then we're probably rocking and rolling. But starting off with our 1-drops, we've got, just like the Blurple, we've got Louisa with the shift line. Solid card, like I said before, being able to shift, move damage, big strong body. Even the 1-drop can challenge a lot of 1-drops and live, so we like that. We've got the Omni Droid 1-drop. So a line that would absolutely demolish some of the aggro lines in this game right now, and also probably help against some of the mid-range matchups, is dropping an Omni Droid on 1, shifting the 4 cost uninkable Omni Droid on turn 2, pinging 2 damage to take out their 1-drop, or most likely now their Grandmother Willow that they've just played if we're on the draw. And then you can sing He Held His Thunderbolt. So that essentially would let you shift it, take out one character, sing, take out another character, and they may even have no board left after that. And you've got a 4/3 left on board that can have more droids shifted on top of it, or just start questing out whilst you play some other characters around that. So I think that's a really strong line to take with this deck. Morph, we've got Morph back, which I'm so happy about. I used to love playing with Emerald Morph. So it's great to see him back in the game. So with so many shifts in this deck, Syndrome, Louisa, and all of the droids, I think Morph's a real good card to test out. It threatens so many different lines that your opponent's not going to know what to do with it. So that's why Morph's in there. The Kronk is a really interesting card that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about right now. Having a 1/3 with resist 1, obviously can take a little bit of a beating, but being able to pay 1 ink once during your turn and draw a card and choose and discard a card adds some really nice filtering into the deck. With Syndrome, being able to bring back Omni Droids from your discard can turn it into a bit of a draw engine even more with him. So 2 copies in there at the moment to test out. I think he could be a really nice addition, even in some other decks like the Flynn and Rapunzel decks that are going to be coming out, just add in a bit more of the filtering. We've obviously lost our Mulan 1-drop, which I think would have been really nice in this deck, so that's why I've added Kronk in there. So we've also got Violet to help with some evasives. Obviously, apart from Singing He Held His Thunderbolt, this deck's going to struggle taking out evasives a bit. So having a nice 4/2 that you can move 1 damage on play with is there to answer the evasive threats, which I think should be really good at doing that. So Cheshire Cat, like I said before, really strong card. Why wouldn't you be playing Cheshire Cat in any purple deck? We've got the 3-cost Omni Droid followed by the 4-cost, which I've already mentioned a little bit. They're both 4/3s. Nice stat line. Anyone wanting to take them out is probably going to have to trade at the sort of like 3-4 ink level. Obviously, you can then go shifting the big ones on, getting resist on those big droids, and they really are going to be a pain to take out. Angel to help with some of the aggressive matchups, so sniping your Willows, sniping any other cheap 1-drops, Aurora, anything else that's going to be causing a problem. We can be discarding a droid, dealing 2 damage, and then using our Syndrome to get the droid we've probably discarded back, and getting really good card advantage and also controlling the board through doing that. Louisa, already briefly spoken about. Demona, doesn't really need anything said about her. Briefly mentioned on Syndrome, obviously being a shift 4, we can shift him on Morph. Get some droids back from the discard if there is any in there, and then play some big droids for free. So there is lines that you can take with this deck where you get Syndrome out on 4, and then you quest him and you play the 8-cost Omni Droid, which means on turn 4 you've got a 4/6 questing for 2, which is going to be constantly giving you card advantage. And also an 8-cost 8/8 with resist 2 that's questing for 2. And I think a lot of decks would struggle to deal with that, unless they're an Amber deck running Gaston, because Amber has all the answers at the moment, along with World's Greatest Criminal Mind. We've got our 6-cost Omni Droid, which when it's shifted it has resist 2. So we can go 1-cost Omni Droid, shift the 4-cost, a couple of turns later, shift the 6-cost, and then a couple of turns after that, shift the 8-cost and get all those droids underneath back. So we've always got loads of cards in hand. The one thing I'm a little bit concerned about this deck is always returning droids to your hand while you have Demona out. I wonder how that's going to work if we've often got more than 3 cards in hand. But we'll have to play and see around with that. 1 copy of You Broke My Smolder. Obviously a little bit of a dock replacement. We've got 3 guidebook, Demona and deck, and obviously some card draw with Syndrome. Well, I don't know if I call Syndrome card draw, but at least maintaining some card advantage. So 1 copy of Broke My Smolder just to see how it plays out. If it feels good, we can go for more, maybe less guidebook, or if there's some other cards that don't feel as necessary in a deck, add some more in there. But kind of just split up guidebook just to try out the You Broke My Smolder and see how that feels in this deck. And obviously He Held His Thunderbolt just being a great piece of removal. Didn't try strength in this deck. I figured because you're shifting a lot of stuff on characters you've already played, by the time you'd normally be singing strength, you've probably only got 2 characters or so out, because your 1 and 2 costs are characters that you're shifting on. So you're not expanding your board and getting strength to do enough damage. So that's why I've not included strength there. Maybe that's a mistake. I guess we'll see. So there's loads of different lines to take with this deck. As I said, playing your Omni Droid, shift in, and then singing He Held His Thunderbolt, or just going 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, and curving out and just trying to play the game from there. So let's have a look at our next deck, our Ruby Amber. So last up, we've got our Ruby Amber Horned King Control. So I'm going to start off talking a bit about the goal of this deck, really. So the goal of this deck is to get to a Ranging Storm and play lots of Olafs. We can play Olaf multiple times from discard by getting him back from Sully, and also having an exerted Horn Kinging play and playing Olaf loads. So essentially your opponent's going to be on a small amount of lore at most times. Maybe they get up a lot and then you just drop another 4 Olafs, they go back down to 0, that sort of thing. So the way you kind of want to start this game out is by having lots of cheap stuff in your hand, such as Besties Assemble, which is a new card. It's a 1-cost inkable action in Amber, and you can look at the top 4 cards of your deck and put a character in your hand. It's Be Our Guest, but 1 cost cheaper and not a song. So as you can see, we have Be Our Guest in here as well. They're a little bit risky because we are only running 19 characters, I believe. So now and again it can miss. Doesn't happen too often, but it is definitely a possibility of this deck. I tried to see what other characters you could put in the deck. I tried out Copper a little bit, but you really want loads of those cheap actions to get Olaf out as quick and cheap as possible. So we've got Besties Assemble, Be Our Guest there, hopefully replacing themselves and being cheap actions to go in a discard. Inner Strength, we know we're definitely drawing a card from that, so I really like that. Just a 1 cost, replace itself, get an action in the discard. Dangerous Plan, I'm not a huge fan of, which is why I'm only running the 1. It's just a bit too gambly for my taste. However, maybe it does really pop off sometimes. I just don't like the idea of losing my Raging Storms and my Olafs when I don't have a way of getting them back yet in the early game. So I'm just running the 1 of as just another cheap action, sort of like a 5th inner strength kind of thing. Maybe you like it more, maybe I'm really undervaluing it. Prophetic Visions is a really, really interesting card. I've already managed to get Raging Storm off a couple of times on turn 2, which I'm not saying is incredible stuff. However, you've got to think by the end of turn 2, sometimes your opponent's already played a 1 cost Willow, something else, or just a decent 1 cost, a decent 2 cost. It is another action in the discard. Obviously, we'd love to save the Raging Storms for the end. However, Prophetic Visions, if it does pick it, then it's going to discard anyway, I believe. So we may as well just clear a couple of characters of it. I know I said I don't like gambly cards like Dangerous Plan, but Prophetic Visions doesn't really feel like it's got a downside. It's not going to make you lose any cards that you want too much, and also has a chance of a bit of lore gain for us and lore drain for the opponent. And this deck is primarily actions, and a lot of these actions do give us some more cards in hand, or at least replace themselves. So if we've played an Inner Strength off the top of our deck, then that's essentially a +1 in hand for us kind of thing. Or maybe not a +1, maybe it's more neutral because it just means Prophetic Visions replaces itself. But we've managed to get 2 actions into the discard and not lose any card advantage in hand, which is a brilliant thing for Olaf. Horseman Strikes, another action just to play, draw a card. Obviously it's a bit expensive just for drawing a card, but beggars can't be choosers. And also being able to just take out an evasive at the same time, really nice in there. Red Alert is a card that I've been a big fan of. It's quite rare that you play this in the mid game before a Raging Storm without having, a monster on board as Sully. But think of it as just a big brawl. It's an inkable Firefly Swarm that can take out a little bit more strength. So allows you to take out Eleanor's and quite a lot of 2, 3, sometimes maybe 4 cost characters. So just delaying your opponent there. So we can play that on 4. We can get rid of a key character our opponent has, stop them from gaining a little bit of lore, and also another action in the discard for Olaf. A couple of other actions we've got. If I Didn't Have You, yes, it gives our opponent draw, but this deck does lack a bit of card draw. We have a lot of replacement, not a lot of card draw. So being able to help us get to the Raging Storm, which is such a key part, is a necessity. So If I Didn't Have You kind of facilitates that at the moment. Maybe one day we'll get some better card draw actions for Amber that isn't going to benefit our opponent. But this is what we've got to do for now. Pirate's Life, just more delaying the opponent, taking some of their lore away. We don't care if the opponent's at 18 lore. We have so many ways in this deck to try and get their lore back down that it can be quite painful to play against, because they're going to get all excited, think they're about to win the game, and then they're back down to 0. So that's what that's there for. The last item, which you may wonder why it's in here for, was Powhatan's Staff. This just enables us to play our Horned King and have him exerted immediately to get cards out of the discard. One of the scariest things with this deck is a lot of the time for the deck to pop off, Horned King has to live. Maybe they're going to Zeus it, maybe they're going to exert it with an Isis or a Demona and take it out, maybe they're going to Hades it. So being able to play a Powhatan's Staff and allow Horned King to come and exert it immediately allows you to get more Horned Kings back to your hand, not to your hand, sorry, in play. and get Sully's back. So the one thing I like doing with this at sort of like the 11 ink break point, if you've already got a Powhatan staff out, you can activate it for 1 ink, give a Horned King bodyguard, you can play Horned King exerted, you've got 5 ink remaining, so you can play a Sully from discard or from hand, preferably from discard if there's one in there, and if you've got another Horned King in your discard, then you can get that Horned King back to mean that you've always got a Horned King in hand, which means the deck can always pop off with a Powhatan staff in play and a Horned King in hand. No matter what they do, you can always run your Olafs into them and then play them from discard. At that point, you've maybe seen all your Olafs with your things like Besties and Be Our Guest. So there's been a couple of games I played with this where they're constantly trying to wipe my Olafs, and each turn I'm just playing 4 Olafs again. So the creme de la creme with this deck is each turn playing a Horn King, a Sully, and 4 Olafs from discard. I don't even want to count how much ink's worth of characters that is, but that's at least, you know, that's like 6 characters with at least a 4/4 stat line, most of which are questing for 2, and also reducing your opponent's lore by 8. And even if you have to Raging Storm your own board, it's no worries because you're probably going to do the same thing the turn after. So quite a strong deck. Does struggle in the early game against some of those aggressive decks. Sometimes they can just eke over the line a little bit before you can hit the Raging Storm. I have found with a lot of the uninkables being quite high in price, like 5 cost, 8 cost, even though there is only 12, which is a little bit on the high side, but not too bad. Sometimes I have bricked on that, go into 7 to 8 turn, drawn an uninkable when you need to play Raging Storm and you've got no inkables left, and then that gives your opponent the win. So something you need to bear in mind a little bit there. But I think it's a good fun deck, maybe not for your opponent, but it'll be fun playing loads of Olafs. I'd be interested to see where this deck goes. It could definitely do with a little bit of tuning, but just good fun, something we haven't been able to do so far. Lots of playing from discard. So if you used to enjoy playing with the set 1 Hades, this could be up your alley. If you love board wipes, this is up your alley. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Obviously, for my first video, any suggestions, just let me know. But thanks for watching.